So anywhere, signs of the times. And you were asking Biden and his, let me, I guess is how you pronounce it. Only be a slap in the face of Israel, but it would serve to encourage guided Palestinian hopes, lest there be any doubt as to how the Palestinians are. On the day following, the state said that Biden was coming over, saying embassy with Jerusalem is biblical. Where did he put his? It was Jerusalem, and when Amos chapter, let's see, let's try chapter 3 days, and it will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with Israel, the nation. God is saying, I was saying on the radio today, the Arabs, the Biden administration, it's not even the Jewish there. My people, party, it's God's land and belongs to God's determination who belongs there. And it's the Jewish people that Jerusalem would be the center, the capital. For Biden administration, you've got to give that land because it's parting God's land. Joel chapter 3 about judge to be divided, Christ governed lap, prime, who have no man. The Biden administration is capitalizing on that. When I say Biden administration, we know he's not the one making the decision. That's just the American president, he's to do this. They should have never allowed it. Said less director how they're interpreting the proposed are the following. On the day of Blinken's announcement, the quote occupy starting to say dating the embassy, the U.S. the real capital of Israel, Jerusalem, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And that's completely in accordance with God's word. Would enact that. Bill Clinton did not. George W. Bush did not. He can, believe it or not, he followed through and he moved it. Very popular. Now, modern Israel. There's Jerusalem right there in the land. And this is Israel. Look at Israel in the whole time. To recognize the Palestinian. Secretary said there, and he for Saudi Arabia, the head of the West Bank territories. And they were all smiling. States government's backing solution, and especially since okay, this is load. It was not wanting to load right away. Press the need to end Israeli occupation of the land of the state of Palestine today. Basically said we're in June. Obviously, somebody missed the memo and they didn't get despair. So the Muslims need something, and so we had this consulate in Jerusalem. Now, our Secretary of the quote here, according to our place, the consulate in the same city. Nobody ever. Not all of them. You can see they want to expand these dark green areas and narrow it at the pre-19 modern pre-1967 that was established by international consent following World War I, when one of the Axis powers were given corresponding to their biblical homeland due to and violence in the area. They gave up about 3/4 of the Jewish homeland area designated as a Jewish homeland for a Palestinian people. That goes back to the when the Romans, Philistine and Palestine. So they're not even related. ethnic Palestinian, Palestine. So everybody there was Palestinians, just like everybody here is an American. If you're in Canada, everybody's a Canadian, because that's where you live. It's a place longer, and Arab Muslims taking down the area of the Jewish, more land for the Arabs, land for the United Nations invaded, and Jordan captured this. So the Palestinians now were on the other side, the west side of the Jordan, 7 borders. Charter for Hamas and the charter for Hezbollah and some of these other groups, they all want Israel to be returned, or to be destroyed completely, pushed into the sea. They don't want any Israel at all. So pre-1967 borders is no more a sincere quarters of the land.
They're not going to be.
Well, that won't even be happy then either. Then they'll be working on Jews anywhere in the world. Yeah. Right? That's what their long-term.
Appeasement doesn't work. Even people marry it. So that little tiny country Israel.
I think so. I control the entire world. Oh,
military thing.
Bush. That storm, against all known meteorological trends, reversed smack dead center into Kennebunkport, Maine, destroyed Bush's house. Geologists were watching a tropical depression in the some hurricanes going indoor Muslim control rather than Israeli control. Something bad happened. I can't help when God happy with those that have part of his. He's been on, I think, Ernie Sanders a lot. That has done. We actually went through the book years ago, series. We just went through it chapter by chapter. And 30s, with the rise of the largest place on Long Island, New York. What was, they had this place set up. They had street and, Himmler Street and things like that at that time. And after that happened, what was it, a week? This hurricane came through, known as the Long Island Express. It came through, so who were trying to take warnings ahead. It came right across the valley, and it was moving so fast. No, it come right in at Long Island.
Yeah. Compilation of well-known people become true, and there is a chapter. We'll split it right down the middle with a giant earthquake right through Mississippi.
Part of the Mississippi. Yeah, earthquake. That was in the 1800s, but it's primed for a big volcano in the San electromagnetic pulse attack, or a Carrington event, a massive solar flare, which we actually dodged one relatively recently, because had the Earth been in a different location, it would have had this out, and these lights would be out, the power would be down, TV net would be out. North Korea and Iran all have tested the techniques for an electromagnetic pulse attack in the everything they need. In Saudi Arabia. But what I'm getting at is, if you had a bomb orbiting from the south, that's our blind spot, because during the Cold War we were focused mostly on North and cause an electromagnetic pulse attack. But the other testing, because remember, even Iran and I don't know if North Korea has orbited anything, but actually orbited operation, if you're researching how to attack the Great Satan. So, and China and Russia in particular is actually can be carried on the back, big metal containers, can be transported somewhere in the United States. Back doors, they punch the codes in, the thing lifts up, and it launches a container.
I was hearing through Hal Turner. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Hal Turner?
Hal Turner. Sure. He's got like a classified information. Just or whole carriers.
He would shoot a nuclear missile, torpedo, I should say, to disrupt. How do you take out a water? There's all these. Were it not for protecting
natural disaster.
Yeah, natural disaster. But we're not and watching. Oh, how could we have survived? It's we looked. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 is working moved than something as they are right now. They're very open about it. And so we have these things taking and hide it in the First Bank of Sealy. Turn it in. Why make it illegal if you're just going to, because people would recognize it and still use it to a degree, recording.
Just going to mention, back in everybody to turn in their gold coin,
Mhm.
like 19
Removed.
Yeah,
That period.
moved or whatever. It's not in the like what we normally think. Now he's gone. You can see instant, the God comes on somebody. And you can see where working, but God's ministry is primarily through the Son, the heaven. And now he comes and he indwells believers at the moment of salvation, caught up to be with the Lord in the air. If the Spirit of God is changing his ministry, it's not that he is. So God still permeates everything. His Spirit still permeates everything. But we're taken up because he's us. Because the Spirit of God is what's, and he's doing that by working through us something, a sanction, ignore good city council meeting to oppose him, and another pastor showed up. The city council spoke to pastor. Is that mine? Mine. Of the agenda for Monday, which is interesting because but they're going on recess. So if they don't slip it into meeting, it won't fall because stood up and they're going to be there for that, just for that reason. But what I'm saying is it's been restrained from happening because how? God working abortion right now, because a great many praying and working, and God responded that would have died. Everything that they can. Has anybody followed this 10-year-old? Nobody could find any evidence. Now, if you're a reporter, nobody reported anything. Media, they could find no court in Indiana that supposedly did this, who filed the Ohio attorney. So life in that speech, media said that's fallen. Nobody. They had all started. They came out and said, "Oh, guess what? Now the doctor is saying I did it. Yes, here's the guy. How come nobody could?"
They didn't manufacture it before.
It was covered up.
Yeah, that's what it was.
In order to make the about, I had he last told me and do it extensively, and the idea, and it's a fake. Apparently, into it, actual evidence that it really happened, and actually stories. Well, he was either living, who knows. So again, did anything the fall? I don't know.
How would we know? They put this guy's face on the, they run them through a sham, pleads guilty case.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the acting job.
Some money and
California, and then he was.
So I don't think we've heard the entire stuff going on with that. Say that we absolutely have to be able to deliver before it's complete, so that we can sell its body parts. I wouldn't.
I had heard too that developed in her body.
With this,
That's why they pushed the abortion.
the heartbeat bill,
Everything else is a life-saving abortion in Ohio. But it doesn't stop them.
but I heard some interesting comment about that today, that, well, they got the guy that's responsible, assuming this happened, they said, well, he should be wicked and underhanded.
There isn't anything that they wouldn't do if they would kill a baby right before birth.
These crimes have to be shut down because they're not killing the babies. something wrong with her.
Everything they do is fake, because I mean, they even do like fake everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're just.
it's across the street. I've seen, and all, they've got several things building and then use it.
This one, like, it doesn't.
So, but
Like
like,
that.
she just said that, repeat the law.
Our own officers away at gunpoint and handcuffs is prevent him from saving his.
Yeah,
So a gun.
because there's something more than shot. He's talking. Oh, sorry. Because they found that there's no excuse saying you can't say just following orders, because that's what these orders.
And they should.
That was
say
wrong.
Just following orders.
No, Nazi prison guards. They said
Yeah.
just following orders.
All that stuff. They're like, I'm just doing my job. All
Mhm.
the teachers.
Yeah,
I was like, that's what.
Yeah. name Robespierre. Yeah, it was. See, oh, who? Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
it was wild based on rule and this put in there. I've always thought I would rather much stuff. The what do they call that? The same French Revolution, the mobs, and they anarchy leads to mob rule, and so set up totalitarians is everything so that they can come forward, shake or the power out of the. He was able to come and make him.
The left back, if we win, does Sanders get the chop? You know, or they the chop or the wall. Still,
Mhm.
he would hinder the revolution. So
He's not good enough.
no, wait, you can't execute him. He's the guy. He was all of our gateway man to, and they're arguing back and forth.
Mhm. I like the top of a,
Yeah, I remember that.
and they take over here. Responsibility rule will be on you or whatever, but this is you to see the person who's going to kill you. And seeing all like they're going to try to kill him in terms of showing goes to the evolution, which was a God-filled fathers, was a born-again Christian, but they pretty much had responsibility to him. And that's what all communist revolutions, God revolutions. In revolutions, the failures, some may last. So I mean, it has been doing, hasn't it? Been excluding God, put God in the system. Not talking about Israel earlier, what you're doing and what your motivation is. Recognize that my house there, but there's so many churches out there was an apartheid state. The region. I mean, all right, in that region we have. Who's the great human civil rights? How about Lebanon? Those are all bastions of freedom. Only. Let's, just for the sake of argument, say somebody is a homosexual and they decide that they want a vacation in the Middle East. What happens to them if they go to Egypt?
They go to prison.
If they go to Saudi Arabia? Well, you throw them off a building and kill them. What if you go to Lebanon? Throw them off. What if they go to Israel? Oh, they can celebrate and party in the homosexual clubs. And that must mean that, yeah, at any rate.
Narratives, because it's so democracy and all this other forced degeneracy, expression of the gospel word, and forced homosexual area, and they want to. That doesn't make any sense.
Here, let's give another one. Which is even jealous that think that apartheid state and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's say as a missionary, I wanted to go help start a church. Now we know you can do it. What try to start a church? Too warm.
Biden appointed this rampant sodomite U.S. influence as a large
number.
Cohort. This just like
Like,
when
no way, send a different. Yeah, there you go.
why does it? It's like when Biden and the president of Kenya said, "Don't come here if you're sodomite." And just like test out the flares on Air Force.
Sure. Nearly 2/3 of America's pastors, biblical pastors, maybe not quite our stripe in this nation, and Baptist, not Presbyterian or Lutheran. churches, but you conservative.
You know, interchange like conservative and Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like they're trying to usher in the one world religion because it's
Yeah.
not the same.
Oh no.
They try to make it like it's the same, but it's really not.
Yeah.
Like you have to act right, you have to do.
With in fact, there's a lot of Christian conservatives that are
that when you get to start music to drum, and they'll ask,
I've seen some social media sites where people, Christians, my Bible stuff,
I don't like
not because I'm conservative positions, because of my Christianity, not Christian.
People into big groups, conservative, Christian, yeah.
But yeah.
You know, the degrees, the degree
Mhm.
is called MAGA,
No,
highest order.
into conservatives have bought into this satanic lie of libertarianism. They clamp down on it. There is no more liberty. There's a lot of God that don't necessarily believe that you ought to have liberty to do certain things. Yeah,
Mhm.
and or we see they don't believe in any type of moral restraint in our nation either.
all libertarians aren't that bad.
But the problem with the libertarian position, this is why I'm not a libertarian. Well, there's libertarians. When we do primaries, oftentimes there's a libertarian. The primary, all of those.
Support and you're not as libertarian anymore in Ohio.
I'd have to look that
They're
one up. Yeah,
appealing it,
yeah.
and
But my problem is a law based on morality. That's morality.
But they go by.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, a libertarian.
And in the office than some Republicans. Yeah, I didn't hear. Yeah.
he's too smart. He knows all that.
Principle of God, which was understood
Mhm.
to be in the scripture, rightful natural freedom that the man had to make
Yeah.
life, liberty. I'll do what I want, and I'm free to do what I want any old time.
Mhm.
Rock and roll rebellion of the 60s.
As we look at spectrum left, conservative and liberal, and really force it's area. It's more mentioned. You build hard, you lean toward. Do you lean? Some very libertarian, and some we kind of artificial. What we've seen is conservative. Mean you believe you must be and how we act, and allies with the conservative stance. The individual who used to be on the Ruth Bader on the court, very on the court with Terry Hamill, several in his legal seminars, Lighthouse Legal Ministries, and seminar. There's history of action that tell right court. What is the Roman Catholic? The state shackle right court championed opening up government fund schools, where they made chipped tire recyclers, not and nonprofit to make a Lutheran advantage of the program. And I'm saying, well, no, well, state in your school to be a violation of the First Amendment. And we went to the Supreme Court. I believe it was the Supreme Court, because we talked about this one. Told this against because they were religious justices. This is a separation, and is not opinion. Leland, Baptist pastor, that Bill of Rights that Williams, rounder of and in the Columbus cited for us, for the church, along to the government came turns to the exact participating in, and he's the traditional believing viewpoint away from any government checks and Michigan early after the state education is available. First again, the play sure some help far to their chagrin, et cetera. School, you have a homosexual. They money. See, we look at that a lot of times. If And we say restrict it from just because have it. To have it because government shall
Lifestyle and trade.
exactly have to be careful. Christian I involved and I running for office as much as we can because that's how that's how the whole train there be. We look at this and conservatism is one of the argument. You're a lawful or you disorder. There's a great and I about once in the past nullify federal orders and mandates. In most states, the Bible says, as long as this book, because we follow this book, we're following.
Brandon, has something to do with you don't have enough black people.
Mm-hmm.
So we're black, and he's like, "Well, fellas, I don't need any of you." And he's telling these, "Oh, and apparently, you know, you're
Yeah.
who are colored, and he's
Yeah.
in order." So
But we need to know the primary physical world. That's why God is it hits right now. Christian, Catholic, what church you go to, everything low in the United States, and all. Not just with the advent of the pandemic. It's happened. It started in 2000, bring God out of the prayer. Oh no, they're training the next generation attendants. Plummeted since the early amongst past 2000s. We're God and sit by do the remixes to talk about it. For young guns to school. There were shooting clubs inside. Shooting fools, guns back of the truck. The truck guns. I don't know if the expired on the great person. I was in grade school on while the cap guns went, and now let's go like this from school. Yeah, I'll shoot it with on a little grade start in the shape of a.
Point your finger at anybody.
When my
Yeah.
son was in kindergarten, he was with his art. He got kicked out of school for that.
Threatening environment. I get in school, I'd probably be thrown in a pocket.
Black family, they had this strict outline. The school hands out little flyers, anti-terrorism. Now, he didn't say Lance. It
They're saying 2 + 2 = 4, they get mad.
That's privilege.
stop bullying because that punches the bully, hits him,
Mhm.
he hits the bully back. Then the teacher actually gets teacher just pretty much laughs at him. Fist trying to police and drag this kid away in handcuffs, and these scumbags court.
But when again, problem is around us a band. Don't pray. Remember Jesus said when he comes and all that. I mean, you read again. Beat now is a lot different. Asians, what was print and at that time they were saying, the way things 1990. I think we'll see the 2000s, the teens, 20s. We're in the 20s. City and church pastors being crying the themselves, rampant wickedness. All seen filled with violence, not just almost, but all of that. And that all, but in even so-called Christians, wrong with having drag queens.
Say what the globalist thing will be. So,
It's like never before. And I agree with what you're saying, and they're open about it. Because see, in the 1970s, the globalists were working, and they said, when this happens, we're going to do this. That happens, and now you're hearing that, like you said, the year starting at the end of September, and it's a jubilee. Things happen in the world. So that's reading too much into this. Not one. Yeah. That was and wasn't, I think that I have somewhere, but there's just so much coming there right now. Jealous, for a reason. God the earth so that back in the 1980s, We are on the at this moment in time. As born again believers, we all want to wrap. All has spirituals that God each of us to at the time are on the cusp of the Lord's return. We as a church were the ones that got of Jesus Christ the first time. He at that time he created Matthew and Mark and Luke and John, Peter and Paul, and vital role to get Christians into this book. We're going to know what. That's why the devil wants to keep us out of this book and keep us from prayer. They went to wrap. I get this is where he keeps me from reading and studying the Bible as much as I should, and he keeps as I should things I and you know that's just where we have to be try to focus. Because God, people they say 2:00. It's like midnight. It's less than that, just a little over a minute and a half from being. They just moved it up again. We see the things that are happening. We said 21 weeks, not when they begin to happen. Redemption dry, jury, purpose for so.
In earth for thousands of years, and then I'll state 3 prophecies about Israel becoming a nation again, Jerusalem, and they're saying that there's no side which still this year.
Yeah, taking place. So,
Not only praying.
all right, pray. Be here. Thank you for to see that we can fulfill individually as well. Father, to keep prayed up. Your word is roads. Your glory tomorrow, Monday. Respect you. Give us opportunities to be. We thank you. Amen. To see you. Right. We'll be here. County Fair, so we'll be down in numbers then because church booth out there. So pray for us.
County Fair?